And sticking with politics, I now want to bring in Joseph Ax over at Reuters. Joseph, good morning. Great to see you as always. Georgia confirmed Joe Biden as the winner last night. He is the first Democrat to win that state since 1992. So are we expecting the results to be certified today? And then what's the Trump campaign's plan after that?
So we are expecting the vote to be certified today. The recount, as you mentioned, ended late yesterday and confirmed that Joe Biden won the election there. The Trump campaign sent out a statement last night essentially dismissing the results of the recount by alleging that it simply recounted all of the, quote, illegal votes that had been cast there. Now, of course, the campaign has yet to prove that a significant number of the votes in that state were cast illegally. They didn't specify what they were going to do last night. They did say they were going to kind of, quote, pursue all their legal options. So you may imagine some additional litigation there. They've already sued in Georgia without success, but it wouldn't be surprising if they filed yet another lawsuit seeking more relief.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Joseph, because when we watched that sort of bizarre press conference yesterday at the RNC with Rudy Giuliani and President Trump's other attorneys, they essentially said that this is just the opening statement. They plan to continue to keep this going as long as possible. But it seems like they're running out of room here on the tarmac to keep this going. What other sort of legal opportunities or challenges do they even have left here to keep this going?
Yeah, it's frankly hard to know exactly what options they have purely from a legal standpoint. They've already filed several lawsuits in multiple states since the election. They've seen almost no success. In most cases, judges have simply thrown out any claims of irregularities. And while at the press conference last night, for example, or yesterday, for example, you saw Rudy Giuliani throwing around a lot of allegations about widespread voter fraud, the truth is that in court, the Trump campaign has been pretty careful, or at least its lawyers have, about throwing around that kind of claim because there simply isn't evidence of widespread fraud of the type that could actually overturn the results in any of the states. So purely from a legal standpoint, it's a bit difficult to see where they go from here. I mean, obviously anyone can file a lawsuit, but I don't think many people expect them to be particularly successful.
Yeah, and on top of that, it seems like the one route that President Trump seems to be really interested in now, or at least his legal team, is talking to these canvassers at the state level. There's now reports from both the New York Times and other outlets essentially confirming that President Trump reached out to those two local canvassers in Michigan, and he's even invited them to the White House. Joseph, just speak how unprecedented that is, and is that essentially the next game plan, convincing a lot of these state canvassers to flip the vote of the will of the people and then just basically elect President Trump from there?
That's exactly right. Reuters reported yesterday, based on some sources familiar with the campaign's plan, that the Trump campaign's is kind of plan B, now that they've been rejected mostly by courts, is in fact to try to convince friendly Republican legislators in key states to essentially subvert the popular vote and appoint their own electors to deliver the Electoral College votes in those states to Donald Trump. And then you use the word unprecedented, and I think that's exactly right. This is unprecedented. It's really an extraordinary attempt to alter the kind of core democratic institutions by a sitting president. And I think it's, like a lot of things in the Trump era, it is a bit hard to put into words just how kind of norm busting it is. We do know from some reporting by my colleagues at Reuters that the Republican leaders of the two Michigan legislative chambers are coming to the White House today at President Trump's request. They haven't committed to any course of action. I think they're simply going to hear what he has to say. They've previously indicated, as have legislative leaders in Pennsylvania, among other states, that they're not planning on appointing another set of electors. And I will say that legal experts are not even sure that that's possible under state law and under federal law. But that does appear to be the Trump campaign's next gambit. And while I don't know that the chances of success are particularly high, A lot of legal experts have kind of described this as really damaging and kind of dangerous for trust in the viability of our elections.
Yeah, Justin, I'm also glad you mentioned the Reuters reports and all this, because you guys at Reuters have really been crushing it right now with all of the scoops you guys have been doing on this story. I do want to talk about the Republican response here, because so many people are curious. When will we start to see more Republicans essentially come out and start talking about Joe Biden being president-elect and start this transition period moving more? Obviously, the most outspoken out of all the Republicans has been Mitt Romney. He released this statement a few hours ago. He said, having failed to make even a plausible case of widespread fraud or conspiracy before any court of law, the president has now resorted to overt pressure on state and local officials to subvert the will of the people. It is difficult to imagine a worse, more undemocratic action by a sitting American president. There's the statement right there. Joseph, what point obviously Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, I'm sure we'll see Lisa Murkowski and others, and Ben Sasse as well. Don't want to forget about him. But what point do you feel like the pressure then will get to Mitch McConnell? Because at the end of the day, he really has the keys to the car in all of this.
Yeah, I think the calendar is partly what's going to determine that. So you mentioned Michigan. Their state board of canvassers is scheduled to meet on Monday to certify the vote. A bunch of other states over the next couple of weeks are going to be certifying their votes. And then, of course, December 14th is when the electors gather to actually cast the Electoral College votes for the president. And so I think there will come a point where it's going to be essentially impossible for Republicans to continue to pretend that Joe Biden didn't win this election. And it's interesting because, obviously, Mitt Romney is no fan of Donald Trump, as we know. But, folks like Mitch McConnell and kind of, some of the more mainstream Republicans in Congress, they've kind of struck this balancing act, right, where they're declining to recognize Joe Biden as the president-elect, but they're also not necessarily endorsing some of the more extreme conspiracy theories that you're hearing out of the Trump camp. They're kind of saying, well, he has the right to challenge this. Let's see where it goes. Let's see what happens. And so I think the end result of that is, once you've got these votes certified, once you've got the electors kind of in place, there's no longer any way of kind of arguing that there's a viable path for Donald Trump anymore. So that's when I think you'll see, maybe not all, but most Republicans kind of come around to the notion that Joe Biden is going to be the president on January 20th.
Joseph, the other angle in all of this is, what does President-elect Joe Biden do in a situation like this? We know he has essentially been pleading with the GSA to at least start the transition process, especially because he needs information regarding the coronavirus and other government resources as well. And reporters really pressed him yesterday at his press conference, asking him, is he thinking about taking a legal challenge against President Trump for delaying this for as long as he has? Joe Biden essentially saying that's not off the table, but that's not what he wants to do. Clearly, he thinks that pressuring Republicans will help get him the materials he needs. Is that a sound strategy for Joe Biden? What sort of avenues should he be taking in a moment like this? Because it's unprecedented for somebody like him sitting in this position as well.
That's right. I think Joe Biden is trying to do a couple of different things. On the one hand, he wants to concentrate and focus on the transition, on preparing for his administration. As you pointed out, that's become somewhat difficult because of the delay with GSA. And I think, Biden's instinct in general is he doesn't want to add to the chaos, right? His entire message has been, as soon as Donald Trump is out of office, we can kind of return to a time when we don't have to deal with all of these kind of insane developments. And so I think, for instance, filing a lawsuit to try to force the GSA to recognize him is the kind of thing that I think the Biden campaign views as simply adding to that sense of chaos. I also think that he doesn't, he wants to condemn what Trump is doing without making it sound as though he's really worried about it, if that makes sense. I don't think he wants to give legitimacy to what Trump is trying to do. So on the one hand, he's saying, this is terrible, it's undemocratic, it sends an awful message to the world. But at the same time, he's saying, I'm not worried about this. I'm going to be president on January 20th, no matter what he does. So let's just focus on what I'm going to do once I get into office.
All right. And of course, that inauguration day about 61 days away from now. Joseph Ax at Reuters. Great to have you here, Joseph. Thanks so much.